Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader Reading Books for You. Today I will be reading Whose Cat Is That? By Phyllis Cochran, illustrated by Jacqueline Peoples. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Dedication to all the children everywhere who have rescued a stray pet and given them a good home. Also, for all those boys and girls out there for loving and caring for an innocent animal. Stephanie and Jessica Hapwell lived on a quiet, dead-end street with their father, mother, and grandmother. Nothing exciting ever happened in their neighborhood. At night, the two sisters stared at their favorite television show. Mama cooked dinner. Daddy read his newspaper. Granny walked around talking to everyone, but no one listened. Tonight was no different. Granny asked, "Whose cat is that in the kitchen?" No one answered. Suddenly, a fat, orange cat popped out from under the table. His eyes were lollipop yellow. His two paws were purple. His nose was purple, and there were 3 purple spots on his forehead. Meow, meow! He surprised Mama. She jumped backwards and almost dropped the bowl of mashed potatoes. The frightened cat ran into the living room and leaped onto Daddy's newspaper. It ripped. Daddy hopped up. His reading glasses flew off his nose. The cat went flying and brushed against Stephanie. She turned around just in time to see him bounce off Jessica's legs. Jessica was lying on her stomach, with her feet bobbing in the air. She heard everyone shouting, but kept watching television. She did not notice the thump on her legs. Mama hurried into the living room to see what was happening. Her fluffy blonde hair swished. She saw the funny-looking cat. "Whose cat is that?" Daddy yelled. "I never saw him before," Mama said. "He tore my newspaper," Daddy hollered. "He bumped into me," Stephanie squealed. The cat ran around the television and rolled over right in front of Jessica. "Look, he is cute. He has 3 purple dots over his eye." "Where did he come from?" Jessica asked, reaching over to pat the cat. "Whose cat is this?" "Someone let him in," Daddy said. "Who let that cat in?" "I didn't," said Granny. "It wasn't me," said Mama. "I didn't," Stephanie yelled. "It was probably Jessica." "I did not," Jessica shouted. Granny went looking for a broom to chase him out. "No, no," Jessica shouted, pulling him close. "Look, his ear is crushed," she said, rubbing his right ear. "I feel sorry for him." The cat did not like anyone touching his ear. He ran outside. On Sunday morning, Mama and Daddy were doing yard work. Granny was sweeping the steps. Jessica and Stephanie were swinging. Mr. Jaggle, the neighbor next door, was busy picking up litter along the edge of the road. He did not hear the cat's meow because his cane went click, click, click. Mr. Jaggle bent over and set the rubbish bag down under the red maple tree. When he stood up, he bumped his bald head on a low branch. He frowned when he saw the big orange cat perched on the Hapwell's stone wall. His dog, Ruckus, started to bark when he saw the cat dart over into Mrs. Waverly's yard. Ruckus was tied to his red doghouse, so he couldn't chase the cat. "Did you see that cat?" Mr. Jaggle asked. "Oh no, not that cat again," Daddy groaned. "He was in my house the other night." "He was in my house 2 nights ago," Mr. Jaggle said. "He ate Ruckus's food and Mrs. Jaggle's peanut butter cookies." "Whose cat is that?" Mr. Jaggle yelled louder because Ruckus wouldn't stop barking. "I don't know. Who let the cat in your house?" Daddy asked. "No one," Mr. Jaggle called back. Ruckus chased him out. Mrs. Waverly, the neighbor across the street, yelled to Mama, "Come on over and see my tulips. They are poking up through the ground." Mama walked over and looked at the green shoots in Mrs. Waverly's garden. She found Mrs. Waverly kneeling down, holding a tulip bulb. "That orange cat dug holes in my flower bed and scooped out some of my bulbs," Mrs. Waverly said, waving her hands toward the cat sitting on her white picket fence. The cat stared back at her through his lollipop yellow eyes. "Yesterday I was painting my house when that cat began sniffling around the paint bucket," Mrs. Waverly said. "Then he swatted a bee. It landed in the purple paint. That naughty cat leaned over the paint can with both paws. I yelled, 'Shoo, cat, shoo!' He knocked the paintbrush over and the paint splattered everywhere. What a sight! Doesn't he look silly with 2 purple paws, a purple nose, and 3 purple spots on his forehead?" Mama started to laugh. "Whose cat is that?" she asked. "I don't know," Mrs. Waverly said, waving her hands over her white curly hair. For days the neighbors complained to one another. When the Hapwell family was gone all day, the neighbors gathered. They chatted over the stone wall. They yelled louder than Ruckus's bark. Everyone was sure that the mischievous cat belonged to the Hapwells. They were the only family in the neighborhood with children. They watched the Hapwells' house very closely. When the Hapwell family came home at night, they talked about the cat. "I believe the cat is Mrs. Waverly's. She is alone, and the cat is probably good company," Daddy told Mama. "You are probably right. She needs a pet to love," Mama added, glancing over at Mrs. Waverly's house. "No one owns the cat," Granny interrupted, but no one was listening. "Mr. and Mrs. Jaggle like animals," Stephanie whispered to Jessica. "I'm sure it is their cat," Jessica said. "Let's find out where the cat really lives," Stephanie told her sister. "Yes, the poor cat has a broken ear," Jessica answered. You're right. A cat with a broken ear could only belong to people like Mr. and Mrs. Jaggle. Stephanie grinned. They would feel sorry for him. She turned her head quickly. Her long yellow ponytail bounced. Mr. and Mrs. Jaggle are good to animals, Jessica shouted, happily hopping on one stocking foot and twisting her ponytail. From their bedroom window, Jessica and Stephanie could see the door of Mr. and Mrs. Jaggle's red, boxy house. They looked at it in the morning. They watched it after school. They even peeked at it until they went to bed at night. One Saturday morning, Mr. Jaggle was walking Ruckus. The dog spotted the orange cat and yanked on his rope. It twisted around Mr. Jaggle's legs. He tumbled and hit his shoulder against the mailbox. All the neighbors came running. Mrs. Jaggle was wearing her favorite green polka dot apron. She was carrying a plate of peanut butter cookies. Mrs. Waverly stuffed her pockets full of dug-up bulbs. She tried to hurry, but the bulbs kept dropping on the ground. Stephanie roller-skated over. Jessica rode her new pink bicycle. Mama and Daddy Hapwell dragged their rakes behind them. Granny stood on the porch and watched. I'm all right, Mr. Jaggle moaned while rubbing his shoulder and untangling Ruckus's rope. Maybe you should walk your cat and leave Ruckus on his morning wire, Mr. Jaggle, Stephanie said. I don't have a cat, he shouted. Doesn't the cat live in your house? Jessica asked. No, Daddy interrupted. That cat is Mrs. Waverly's. You're right, he lives with Mrs. Waverly, Mama said. The neighbors pointed to the Hapwell family. Together they shouted, We saw the cat walk into your house when Granny carried groceries in from the car. She let him in. I saw the cat dart through Mrs. Waverly's open window, Mama insisted. Mr. Jaggle let the cat in himself, Jessica and Stephanie hollered. Mrs. Waverly waved her hands. Mrs. Jaggle began chewing on a cookie. Mr. Jaggle clicked his stick 5 times and tied Ruckus to a mailbox post. Mama and Daddy threw their rakes aside. That cat doesn't belong to anyone, Granny yelled, but no one was listening. Everyone began hollering louder and louder. The fat orange cat strutted over to where everyone was standing. He looked up at the neighbors. Then he leaped up and landed on the mailbox. Ruckus barked. Mrs. Waverly told everyone to stop talking at the same time. Whose cat is that? Mrs. Waverly asked. Not mine, they all shouted. All the neighbors glared at the cat. He stared back at everyone with his lollipop yellow eyes. The poor cat has a crushed ear. He doesn't have a home. Doesn't anyone care? Jessica cried. The cat will ruin my flowers, Mrs. Waverly said. We can't take him home. We are old and Ruckus would hurt him. The cat needs children to play with, Mrs. Jaggle said. No one loves you, kitty cat, Jessica said sadly. I like him as long as he doesn't scratch me, Stephanie added. Suddenly, the cat jumped into the basket on Jessica's bicycle. Jessica patted the 3 purple dots on his forehead. The cat began licking her chin. "You poor, poor kitty," Jessica whispered, hugging the cat. "Can we keep him?" Mama looked at Daddy. "Okay, girls," Daddy sighed. "We'll let the cat live with us. I think we will call him Junior. We have 2 girls. Now we will have a boy." As the sun was setting, Jessica Hapwell called out, "Junior! Come, Junior!" The whole family stood on the lawn and waited and watched. Junior strutted up the walk and through the front door. The Hapwell family followed behind. Then they closed the door. All the neighbors watched and smiled. Ruckus stopped barking. Once again, the neighborhood was very quiet. Nobody ever again asked, "Whose cat is that?" The end. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.